Ambassador Sarah Chun walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council building. The structure was so tall that she could not see the top. Made of blue crystal that seemed to glow from inside, it rose into the purple sky of Nexus Prime. Like a mountain made by gods. Sarah was small compared to most beings here. Humans always were. At 5 feet 6 inches tall, she felt tiny next to the 8-foot-tall Kreth warriors with their gray skin and sharp teeth. The floating gas beings from Arcturus made soft humming sounds as they drifted past her. Even the plant-like Verdani were twice her height, their green leaves rustling as they moved on root feet. But Sarah walked with confidence. She had to. Today would change everything. The main council chamber was a perfect circle, big enough to hold a small city. Representatives from 847 different worlds sat in seats that floated at different heights. Some beings needed water tanks, others required special gas mixtures to breathe. The center of the room held a speaking platform that could adjust to any species. Sarah looked at her team. Marcus Webb, the military advisor, checked his tablet one more time. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the scientist, stared at the alien technology around them with wonder and worry. They were the only humans in a room of thousands. The council speaker was a Zephyrian, tall and thin with silver skin that changed colors with their mood. Right now, the skin showed deep blue patterns. Anger or frustration, Sarah knew from her studies. The Council will now hear from the human delegation regarding Resolution 847C, the speaker announced. The translation device in Sarah's ear turned. The alien words into perfect English. Sarah stepped onto the platform. It rose slowly, bringing her to the center of attention. 847 different pairs of eyes, sensors, and other sensing organs focused on her. Honored representatives, Sarah began. Humanity has served the Galactic Council for 300 years. We have given our resources, our people, and our loyalty. We have followed every rule and law. We have sent our children to fight in the Council's wars. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some species made clicking sounds, others flashed lights or changed colors. The translation systems worked hard to keep up. But today, you ask us to give up the worlds we built with our own hands? New. Geneva, where my grandfather died clearing the land. Terra Nova, where human engineers turned the dead rock into a garden. Aurora Prime, where human children now play under an alien sun. The Kreth representative stood up. General Vex was massive even for his species, with scars covering his gray hide. The humans expand too fast, he growled. They take more than they deserve. These worlds would be better managed by established species. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest, but her voice stayed calm. Better managed? New Geneva produces more food than any 3 council worlds combined. Terra Nova's factories supply medical equipment to half the galaxy. Aurora Prime's research stations have created new medicines that save millions of lives every year. A Verdani representative rustled their leaves. The humans do not understand proper growth. They spread like weeds, choking out natural development. Natural development? Sarah laughed, but it was not a happy sound. We turned empty space and dead rocks into homes for billions. We built cities under alien suns. We made gardens in the void. And now you want to take them away because we did it too. Well, the council speaker's skin flashed red. The resolution has been voted on. The council has spoken. These worlds will be redistributed to prevent further human expansion. The decision is final. Sarah looked around the chamber. 300 years of serving these beings. 300 years of being treated like children who could not be trusted with important decisions. 300 years of following orders from species who had never worked as hard or achieved as much. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, studying to be a doctor. She thought about the human colonies where people worked 16-hour days to build something better. She thought about the human soldiers who died protecting council worlds from pirates and raiders. No, Sarah said quietly. The word hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. What did you say? The speaker demanded. Sarah raised her voice so every being in the chamber could hear. I said no, humanity rejects this resolution. We reject your authority over our worlds. We reject your right to redistribute what we built." The chamber erupted. Beings jumped to their feet, floated higher, or made loud noises of shock and anger. Some species had never heard anyone refuse a council decision. The speaker's skin turned bright red, then white, then settled on an angry orange. "You cannot refuse. The council speaks for all civilized species." "Then we are no longer civilized by your standards," Sarah replied. "Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will honor our existing trade agreements for 1 standard year. After that, we consider ourselves free agents." The noise in the chamber died to complete silence. In 3,000 years of Galactic Council history, no species had ever left voluntarily. Some had been expelled for war crimes or violations. Others had been destroyed by enemies. But none had simply walked away. General Vex recovered first. "You cannot survive without the Council's protection. Your species is weak. Your worlds are spread too thin. You will come crawling back within a year." Sarah smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "General, you have never fought humans who had nothing to lose. I suggest you not find out what that looks like." She turned to leave, but the speaker called out, "If you leave the Council, you lose all protection. Any species can attack your worlds. Any group can raid your ships. You will be alone in a dangerous galaxy." Sarah paused at the edge of the platform. "We have been alone for 300 years. We just pretended otherwise." She looked back at the assembled representatives. "You want to know what makes humans different? We do not ask permission to be great. We do not need committees to tell us what we can achieve. We do not wait for others to give us what we can take for ourselves." She stepped off the platform and walked toward the exit. Marcus and Dr. Vasquez followed her, their footsteps echoing. In the silent chamber, as they reached the doors, Sarah turned back one more time. "You held us back for 3 centuries. You made us small and weak and dependent. But we are still here. We are still growing. We are still building. And now we are free." The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. Outside, the purple sky of Nexus Prime was turning dark. 3 moons hung in the alien constellation patterns that Sarah had learned to read during her time as ambassador. In a few hours, she would board the human transport ship for the journey. Back to Earth. Marcus was already on his communication device, sending coded messages to human military commanders across the galaxy. Dr. Vasquez was calculating supply chains and resource needs for independent operation. "Do you think we can do it?" Dr. Vasquez asked. "Survive on our own?" Sarah looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were farming, building, researching, and growing. Human families were raising children who would never bow to alien authority. Human engineers were solving problems that council scientists said were impossible. "Elena," Sarah said, "humans have been surviving on their own since we learned to make fire. The only difference now is that we are doing it among the stars." Behind them, the crystal towers of the council building pulsed with concerned light patterns. Inside, representatives were already forming committees to study the economic impact of losing humanity's contributions. Some were calculating military responses. Others were trying to figure out how to function without human manufacturing and agricultural output. But Sarah did not look back. She was too busy thinking about the future. On Earth, President Maria Santos was probably preparing to address the world. The news would spread quickly through human space. Some colonies would panic. Others would celebrate. All of them would have to decide what kind of future they wanted to build. The transport ship waited at the spaceport, its hull painted with the blue and white colors of Earth. Human crew members were loading supplies and checking systems. They moved with the quick efficiency that other species found unsettling. Humans always seemed to be in a hurry, always pushing to do more, be more, achieve more. As Sarah climbed the boarding ramp, she heard Marcus talking to someone back on Earth. "Yes, sir, the council vote went exactly as predicted. Yes, sir." Ambassador Xian delivered the withdrawal notice. "No, sir." "There's no going back now," Sarah smiled. There was no going back. For the first time in 300 years, humanity would write its own destiny. The ship lifted off from Nexus Prime's surface, carrying the human delegation away from the council they had served for so long. Below them, the crystal city grew, smaller and smaller until it was just another light on an alien world. But ahead of them, the stars waited, and humans had always been good at reaching for the stars. The news traveled faster than anyone thought possible. On Kepler Station, the biggest trading hub in the Orion Arm, Merchant Captain Zilt was drinking fermented seaweed juice when his communication device started flashing. The small, green-skinned trader from Bellows Prime read the message 3 times before he believed it. Humans left the council? He squeaked to his drinking partner, a large blue creature from the water world of Aquatica, the blue being made gurgling sounds that meant surprise. Impossible! No species leaves the council. The council is everything. Zilt's 4 hands were already working his calculator. Humans supplied 40% of the manufactured goods that passed through Kepler Station. They grew 30% of the food. Their mining operations provided rare metals that kept half the galaxy's technology. Running? We are in trouble, Zilt whispered across the station. Similar conversations were happening in a dozen different languages. The Corvan spice merchants were panicking because humans bought more exotic foods than any other species. The Centauri. Weapon dealers were trying to figure out if human military contracts were still valid. Even the vegan pacifists who never bought anything related to war were worried about human medical supplies. Within 6 hours, the galactic stock market had dropped by 15%. On the war world of Kreth Prime, General Vex stood before the War Council in a room decorated with the skulls of conquered enemies. The walls were black stone, carved with images of Kreth victories over the past 1,000 years. The humans think they can survive alone, Vex growled to his fellow generals. They are weak, soft, they have never faced a real war. General Tusk, whose scars were even more impressive than Vex's, leaned forward. Their colonies are spread across 50 systems. They have no central defense, no unified command. We could take 10 worlds before they could respond. Which worlds? Asked General Fang, the youngest of the war leaders. Vex activated a holographic map of human space. Green dots showed human colonies. Red lines showed Kreth patrol routes. New Geneva has the biggest population. Terra Nova has the factories. Aurora Prime has the research facilities. Take any one of them, and the others will surrender. The War Council agreed. Within hours, Kreth battle fleets were preparing for what they expected to be an easy conquest. On Earth, President Maria Santos stood in the Oval Office, looking out at the gardens where her predecessor had planted trees from every human world. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but today she looked tired. The economic reports are not good, said Treasury Secretary James Kim. We lose access to council trade networks in 1 year. That is half our interstellar commerce. The military reports are worse, added Admiral James Park. He was a tall, thin man with sharp eyes and calloused hands from his years on starships. 16 species have already asked about claiming human worlds. The Kreth are moving fleets toward our border. Maria nodded. She had expected this. What about our allies? The Altarians sent a nice message of support, said Foreign Secretary Rachel Torres. But they also said they cannot help us against the Council. The Centauri are staying neutral. Everyone is scared. Maria turned from the window. James, what is the status of Project Breakthrough? Admiral Park smiled for the first time that day. The first ships are ready for testing. The new drive systems work better than we hoped, and the weapon systems. He paused. Let us just say that the Council never knew what humans could really build. For 300 years, humans had followed Council restrictions on military technology. Council law said that member species could only build certain types of weapons, use certain types of engines, employ certain battle tactics. The Council wanted to prevent any one species from becoming too powerful, but humans had never stopped researching. In secret laboratories on distant moons, human scientists had pushed the boundaries of physics. In hidden shipyards, Human engineers had built vessels that could do things council ships could not even imagine. Now, for the first time in 3 centuries, humans were free to use everything they had learned. How long before the fleets are ready? Maria asked. The defense fleets are ready now, Admiral Park replied. The exploration fleets will be ready in 6 months. The deep strike fleets ... He smiled again. Let us hope we never need those. Maria sat down at her desk and activated the global communication system. In a few minutes, she would address every human world, every colony, every station. She would tell them that humanity was alone now, but not helpless. My fellow humans, she began, and her voice carried to farms on New Geneva, factories on Terra Nova, research stations on Aurora Prime, and mining colonies in the asteroid belts. Today we begin a new chapter in human history. On New Geneva, farmer Tom Willis was loading grain onto transport ships when the president's message reached him. Tom was third-generation colonial. His grandfather had cleared the land with his bare hands. His father had built the first irrigation systems. Tom had expanded the farms until New Geneva fed a dozen worlds. Think we can make it on our own, Dad? Asked his son Mike, who was home from university. Tom looked across the golden fields that stretched to the horizon. Human sweat and blood had made this world green. Human determination had turned empty soil into the most productive farmland in the galaxy. Son, Tom said, humans have been making it on our own since the beginning of time. The only difference now is we do not have to ask permission. On Terra Nova, factory manager Lisa Chong was reviewing production schedules when her workers gathered around the communication screens. The massive industrial complex employed 50,000 humans and produced everything from computer chips to starship parts. What happens to our contracts? Asked Foreman Dave Rodriguez. Half our customers are council species. Lisa had been thinking about the same thing. We honor existing contracts for 1 year. After that, we find new customers. Or we make new products. Humans are good at adapting. She was right. Within hours, human factories across the galaxy were retooling their production lines. Instead of making goods designed to council specifications, they would build things the human way. Faster, cheaper, more efficient. On Aurora Prime, Dr. Sarah Kim was working late in her laboratory when the news arrived. She was developing new medicines based on research that the council had declared too dangerous. The council believed that medical technology should advance slowly, carefully, with committees reviewing every step. Humans believed that people were dying while committees debated. Dr. Kim, her assistant called out, what do we do about the research restrictions? Sarah looked at the experimental treatments she had been forced to keep secret. Cures for diseases that killed millions every year. Therapies that could extend human life by decades. Technologies that could heal injuries that council medicine considered permanent. We ignore the restrictions, Sarah said simply. We save lives first and worry about permissions later. In the Deep Space Monitoring Station near Pluto, technician Robert Chun was tracking ships moving through human space. His sensors showed something that made him call his supervisor immediately. Sir, we have movement on the Kreth border. 3 battle fleets heading toward New Geneva. Supervisor Janet Parker studied the readings. How long until they reach colonial space? 72 hours at current speed. Janet activated the emergency communication system. Within minutes, Admiral Park was receiving the warning on Earth. The human military had been preparing for this moment for decades. All units, Admiral Park's voice went out on encrypted channels. Operation Independence is now active. Repeat, Operation Independence is active. Across human space, secret bases came online. Hidden shipyards opened their doors. Weapons that had never been tested in combat powered up for the first time. The humans had spent 3 centuries following council rules. But they had also spent 3 centuries preparing for the day when the rules no longer mattered. On Kepler Station, Merchant, Captain Zilt was trying to find alternative suppliers for the goods he usually bought from humans. But everywhere he looked, the prices were higher and the quality was lower. Maybe humans will change their minds, his blue friend suggested. Maybe they will ask to rejoin the council. Zilt looked at the news reports coming from human space. Human colonies were not panicking. Human factories were not shutting down. Human ships were not fleeing to council space for protection. Instead, humans were working, building, preparing. No, Zilt said quietly. I think the galaxy is about to change. And I think we need humans more than they need us. He was right. In the council chambers on Nexus Prime, emergency sessions were being called. Economic advisors were presenting reports that painted a grim picture. Without human agricultural output, food prices would rise across the galaxy. Without human manufacturing, technology costs would double. Without human mining operations, rare metal supplies would run short within a year. The council speaker's skin was flashing rapid patterns of stress and confusion. Surely they will reconsider. Surely they will see that they need us. But deep in the restricted files of the council's intelligence service, analysts were reading reports about human military capabilities that had been hidden for decades. Secret weapons, advanced ships, battle tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. The reports painted a picture of a species that had been holding back, following rules, playing nice, but also a species that had never stopped preparing. For war, what have we done? Whispered Intelligence Director Kala, her tentacles writhing with worry. The answer was spreading across the galaxy. Like wildfire, humanity was free, and the galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. 6 months after humanity left the council, General Vex finally got his chance for war. The Kreth battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system like a storm made of metal and death. 50 warships, each one built for destruction. The smallest was twice the size of any human vessel the Kreth had ever seen. On the bridge of his flagship, the Bloodfang, General Vex studied the peaceful farming world hanging in space ahead of them. Green and blue, with white clouds swirling over continents covered in golden grain fields. The planet held 12 million humans who had never known real war. Too easy, growled his second-in-command, Colonel Grack. The humans have no defense. Fleet? No orbital weapons? No military installations? Vex nodded. Intelligence reports showed that New Geneva was protected by only 6 patrol ships and a small defense station. The humans had always depended on the council fleet for protection. Now they were alone and helpless. Send the surrender demand, Vex ordered. Tell them they have 1 hour to yield, or we will take the planet by force. The message went out on all frequencies. General Vex of the Kreth Dominion was claiming New Geneva in the name of his people. The human colonists could surrender and be relocated, or they could die fighting a hopeless battle on New Geneva. Governor Sarah Martinez received the message in her office overlooking New Geneva City. She was a small woman with calloused hands. From her years as a farmer, but her eyes were steady as she read the Kreth ultimatum. "Governor," said her aide, "the council protocols say we should surrender to superior force. We have no way to fight 50 warships." Sarah looked out her window. At the city below, human children were playing in parks built where forests had been cleared by hand. Human families were living in homes built from stone quarried by human workers. Human farmers were growing food in soil made fertile by 3 generations of human sweat. "Get me Admiral Park," she said. The connection took several minutes to establish. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen, sharp and focused despite the early hour on Earth. "Governor Martinez," he said. "We are tracking the Kreth fleet. Help is coming." "How much help?" Sarah asked. "They have 50 ships." Admiral Park smiled. And it was not a nice smile. "Governor, we have been preparing for this day for a very long time. Trust me." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah to wait and wonder. Outside, her staff was already implementing evacuation plans, moving civilians to underground shelters. But Sarah remained at her desk, watching the sky dot in space above New Geneva. The 6 human patrol ships took position between the planet and the Kreth fleet. They were small, sleek vessels designed for speed rather than fighting. Each one carried maybe 30 crew members. Captain Janet Torres commanded the patrol ship Defiance. She was young for a ship captain, barely 30, with short black hair and steady hands. She had volunteered for patrol duty on New Geneva because she wanted to protect the place where her grandparents had met and married. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "the Kreth are demanding we move aside. They say they do not want to destroy us unnecessarily." Janet looked at her crew. 28 men and women who had chosen to stand between a farming world and an army of killers. They all knew the odds. They all knew they would probably die in the next few hours. "Send a reply," Janet said calmly. "Tell them that humans do not move aside." On the Bloodfang, General Vex received the human response with amusement. "Brave little insects. Very well, destroy the patrol ships, then begin orbital bombardment of the military targets." "Sir," his weapons officer said, "there are no military targets. It is a farming world." "Then bomb the farms?" Vex snarled. "Humans must learn the cost of defying the strong." The Kreth fleet moved forward, weapons charging. The 6 human patrol ships spread out, preparing to sell their lives as dearly as possible. That was when space itself seemed to tear open, the hyperspace portal that appeared between the human ships and the Kreth fleet was bigger than anything Vex had ever seen. Energy crackled around its edges like captured lightning, and out of it came ships that made the Kreth fleet look like toys. The first ship was 3 miles long, sleek and black, covered with weapon ports that glowed with barely contained power. More ships followed. 50, then 100, then 200 vessels of designs that the Kreth had never seen before. "What are those?" Colonel Grack whispered on the lead ship. Admiral Park stood on a bridge that was more like a command center, with holographic displays showing every aspect of the battle space. He had commanded fleets before, but never ships like these. Never weapons like these. For 300 years, humans had built according to Council specifications. Slow ships, weak weapons, defensive tactics only. The Council had been afraid of what humans might create if they were allowed to build whatever they wanted. Now the galaxy would find out. "This is Admiral James Park of the Human Defense Force," his voice carried across all frequencies. "Kreth fleet, you are in violation of human territorial space. Withdraw immediately." General Vex stared at the human fleet. 200 ships where intelligence had said there were none. Technology that his sensors could not fully analyze. Weapons that registered power levels beyond anything in the Kreth arsenal. But Vex was a warrior. He had fought and won 100 battles. He would not be frightened by human tricks. "Attack!" he roared. The Kreth fleet opened fire with everything they had: plasma cannons that could melt mountains, missile systems that could destroy cities, energy beams that had cracked the hulls of the strongest Council warships. The human fleet absorbed the attack like a sponge. Absorbing water. Force fields that bent the laws of physics deflected the plasma. Point defense systems destroyed missiles with precision that seemed impossible. Armor that incorporated technologies the Council had banned as too dangerous shrugged off. Energy beams that should have cut the ships in half. Then the humans fired back. The weapons that emerged from the black ships were not like anything in galactic warfare. Instead of the crude plasma and kinetic projectiles that most species used, humans had developed weapons based on pure physics. Gravity cannons that crushed Kreth ships like empty cans. Quantum disruptors that made enemy vessels simply stop existing. Temporal weapons that aged targets into dust in seconds, but the most terrifying part was not the weapons themselves. It was how the humans used them. Council warfare was formal, ritualized. Ships faced each other in neat formations. Battles were fought according to rules that had been established for millennia. There was honor in the way civilized species fought. Humans fought to win. Human ships appeared behind the Kreth fleet using technology that made hyperspace jumps look slow. They attacked from above and below, from angles that three-dimensional thinking said were impossible. They used tactics that violated every rule of honorable combat. They won. In less than 20 minutes, the mighty Kreth battle fleet was reduced to burning wreckage. Of the 50 ships that had come to conquer New Geneva, only 5 remained. and they were running for their lives. General Vex, his flagship crippled and his pride destroyed, sent one last message to the human fleet. "This is not over, humans. The Kreth do not forget. We will return with 1,000 ships." Admiral Park's reply was calm and cold. "General, if you return to human space with even one ship, we will follow you home. And we will show you what humans do to species that threaten our families." The threat was clear. The Kreth had attacked human civilians. In human culture, that was unforgivable. The surviving Kreth ships limped away, carrying news that would shake their homeworld. The humans they had thought weak and defenseless had weapons and ships beyond imagination. More importantly, they had the will to use them. On New Geneva, the celebration lasted for 3 days. Governor Martinez stood before crowds of cheering colonists and said the words that would be remembered for generations. "Today we learned that freedom is not free. But we also learned that humans will pay any price to keep it." But the real impact of the battle was felt across the galaxy. On Kepler Station, Merchant Captain Zilt watched the news reports with growing amazement. The humans had not just defended themselves. They had destroyed one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy with casual ease. "Where did those ships come from?" his blue friend asked. Zilt was studying the technical specifications that human sources were releasing. The ships were not just advanced. They were generations ahead of anything the Council possessed. They built them in secret, he realized. For 300 years, while we thought they were following our rules, they were preparing for this day. The implications were staggering. If humans had hidden this much military capability, what else had they been concealing? On the Council worlds, emergency meetings were being called at the highest levels. The economic impact of losing human trade was bad enough. But if humans could build fleets that made Council ships obsolete, the entire balance of galactic power was shifting. Intelligence Director Kala presented her report to the full Council. "Our analysis suggests that human technology is at least 50 years ahead of our own in most areas. In some fields, possibly 100 years ahead." "How is that possible?" demanded the speaker. "They never stopped researching," Kala replied. "They followed the letter of our technology restrictions, but they found ways around every limitation. They used theoretical research, prototype development, and testing in deep space where we could not monitor them." The Council chamber fell into worried silence. For 3,000 years, the Council had maintained peace by ensuring that no single species became too powerful. They had restricted technology, limited military development, and kept everyone dependent on the collective. But humans had found a way to become powerful in secret. And now they were free to use that power however they chose. The most frightening part was that the battle at New Geneva had probably been a small demonstration. Intelligence suggested that humans had much larger fleets, much more advanced weapons, and battle plans that covered scenarios the Council had never considered. On Kreth Prime, the War Council met in emergency session. The 5 surviving ships had brought news that shattered Kreth confidence. Their most powerful fleet had been destroyed by an enemy they had thought was weak. "We need allies," General Tusk said. "The humans are too strong to fight alone." "Who will ally with us against humans?" General Fang asked. "After what happened at New Geneva, everyone will be afraid." General Vex, his pride wounded but his strategic mind still sharp, studied the reports from the battle. "The humans did not just defeat us, they humiliated us. They showed the galaxy that the Kreth can be beaten easily." "Then what do we do?" Vex was quiet for a long moment. Finally he spoke. "We learn, we adapt. And we never underestimate humans again." Across the galaxy, other species were coming to similar conclusions. The humans they had thought they knew were gone. In their place was something new, something powerful, something that would not be controlled or contained. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was just getting started. 1 year after humanity left the Galactic Council, Captain Zara Okafor stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest space station, watching construction ships build what would become the largest trade hub in the galaxy. The station was called Freedom Point, and it floated in neutral space between human territory and the rest of the galaxy. Unlike the sterile council stations with their endless regulations and bureaucracy, Freedom Point was designed by humans for efficiency and profit. "The Belosian merchants arrived this morning," reported her assistant, Lieutenant Commander Sarah. "Kim, they want to establish permanent trading offices here." Zara nodded. The small, green-skinned traders from Belos Prime had been among the first to break ranks with the Council's economic sanctions against humanity. They had discovered that human goods were not only cheaper and better quality than Council alternatives, but humans were willing to trade with anyone who could meet their prices. What about the Centauri delegation? Still in meetings with Ambassador Chun, they are interested in joining the Commonwealth, but they want security guarantees. Zara smiled. The Terran Commonwealth had grown from an idea to reality in just 12 months. What had started as humanity's answer to the Galactic Council had become something much more significant. The Commonwealth was not like the Council. There were no complex membership requirements, no cultural restrictions, no limits on technology development. Any species could join if they agreed to 3 simple principles: mutual defense, free trade, and respect for self-determination. 20-8. Species had already joined. More were asking questions every day. On Earth, President Santos sat in her office reviewing reports from across human space. The numbers were almost too good to believe. Economic growth is up 40%, Treasury. Secretary Kim reported. Without Council regulations limiting our trade, we have opened markets we never knew existed. Industrial production is up 60%, added Commerce Secretary Williams. Our factories are running at full capacity, and we are building new ones every month. Population growth on the colonies is the highest in human history, said Colonial Affairs Secretary Martinez. People want to move to human space because they know they will be free to build whatever they can dream. But the most impressive report came from Admiral Park. Our defense capabilities are now beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen, he said quietly. The new shipyards are producing vessels that make our new Geneva fleet look primitive. Our research stations are developing technologies that will keep us ahead of any possible threat for generations. Maria looked out her window at the gardens where representatives from dozens of species now walked and talked. The Altarian ambassador was discussing trade agreements with a Belosian merchant. A group of Centauri scientists were examining human agricultural techniques. Even a few former Council species had sent unofficial observers. "James," she said to Admiral Park, "what do our intelligence reports say about Council space?" The Admiral's expression grew serious. Economic collapse in the outer sectors, food shortages on 12 worlds. Industrial production down by 30%. 3 species have applied for emergency aid, but the Council bureaucracy is too slow to respond effectively. And military situation? The Kreth are building new fleets, but their technology is still decades behind ours. The Vegan Republic is considering neutrality rather than supporting Council military action. Several species are questioning whether the Council can actually protect them anymore. Maria was not surprised. The Council had been built on the idea that collective security and economic cooperation were worth giving up individual freedom. But when the collective could not provide security or prosperity, the arrangement became a burden rather than a benefit on New Geneva. Governor Martinez walked through the capital city's new district, where construction crews were building homes and offices for the alien species that had chosen to relocate to human space. The Altarians had been first, bringing their expertise in biotechnology. Then came the Belosians with their trading networks. The plant-like Verdani had established agricultural research centers, learning human farming techniques that could triple their own food production. "Governor," said her aide, the Centauri delegation wants to tour our defense installations. Sarah smiled. The Centauri were the most technologically advanced species in their sector, but they had been impressed by human military capabilities at New Geneva. Now they were considering joining the Commonwealth, but they wanted to be sure humans could protect them from Council retaliation. "Schedule the tour," Sarah said. "Show them everything except the classified projects." The classified projects were humanity's insurance policy. While the galaxy knew humans had advanced technology, they did not know how advanced. Hidden research stations were developing weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Secret shipyards were building vessels that could travel between galaxies. Deep space laboratories were unlocking the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Humans had learned a lesson from their time in the Council. Never again would they allow themselves to be vulnerable to other species' ambitions. On Kepler Station, Merchant Captain Zilt was preparing his ship for another trading run to human space. His cargo holds were filled with exotic goods from across the galaxy, all destined for human markets that paid better prices than anywhere else. "Captain," his blue friend said, "are you sure about this? The Council has banned trade with humans." Zilt looked at his profit reports. In 1 year of trading with humans, he had made more money than in the previous 10 years of following Council. "Regulations. The Council can ban whatever they want," he said. "But they cannot ban mathematics. Human trade makes me rich. Council trade makes me poor. The choice is obvious." He was not alone. Despite official sanctions, trade between human space and the rest of the galaxy had increased by 300%. Human goods were simply too good and too cheap to ignore. On the Council world of Nexus Prime, Speaker Vexi faced the worst crisis in Council history. The silver-skinned Zephyrian's color patterns showed deep stress as she addressed the emergency assembly. "Economic reports show continued decline in Council trade networks," she announced. "Military reports indicate that 17 species are reducing their contributions to Council defense forces. Political reports suggest that 43 species are considering independence referendums." The chamber buzzed with worried sounds from dozens of different species. For 3,000 years, the Council had maintained order through a combination of economic incentives and collective security. But humans had proven that species could be more prosperous and more secure outside the Council system. Intelligence. Director Kala presented her latest assessment. "Human military capabilities continue to exceed our projections. Their industrial capacity is now larger than the top 10 Council worlds combined. Their technological advancement shows no signs of slowing." "What about their Commonwealth?" asked the vegan representative. "Growing rapidly," Kala replied. 28 member species, with more joining every month. Unlike our system, membership is simple and benefits are immediate. They offer protection, trade opportunities, and technological sharing without the bureaucratic overhead that limits our effectiveness. The Council faced a terrible realization. Humans had not just left the Council. They had created something better. On the research world of Aurora Prime, Dr. Sarah Kim worked in her laboratory on projects that would have been forbidden under Council law. The restriction on dangerous medical research had been lifted, and human scientists were making breakthroughs that saved lives across the galaxy. "Dr. Kim," her assistant called out, "the Centauri medical delegation wants to see the regeneration." "Therapy results?" Sarah smiled. The Centauri had lost a war with the Kreth 50 years ago, leaving thousands of their people permanently disabled. Council medicine could do nothing for them. But human regenerative technology could regrow lost limbs, repair damaged organs, and restore full health to victims of terrible injuries. "Schedule a demonstration," Sarah said, "and prepare the licensing agreements. If they want our medical technology, they need to join the Commonwealth." It was a pattern repeated across human space. Species that wanted access to human technology, human markets, and human protection had one option: join the Commonwealth and accept its principles of freedom and cooperation on Kreth Prime. General Vex met with representatives from a dozen species that shared the Kreth desire to humble humanity. But the meeting was not going well. "The humans destroyed your fleet," pointed out the Regelian commander. "What makes you think a larger alliance would fare better?" "Numbers?" Vex replied. "The humans cannot fight the entire galaxy." "Can they?" "Not?" asked the Arcturian delegate. "Our analysis suggests their industrial capacity could support fleets larger than anything we have ever imagined. And their technology advantage continues to grow." The uncomfortable truth was that humans were becoming stronger every day, while their potential enemies were becoming weaker. Species that might have joined an anti-human alliance were instead joining the Commonwealth. Resources that might have been used for weapons were being diverted to trade and development on Freedom Point. Ambassador Sarah Chun welcomed another delegation seeking Commonwealth membership. The insectoid hybrax had been minor members of the Council, contributing little and receiving less. But they had valuable resources and strategic location that humans could use. The Commonwealth offers full membership, Sarah explained to the hybrax queen through translation devices. Free trade, mutual defense, and respect for your cultural autonomy. In return, we ask only that you respect the same freedoms for other species. The queen's antennae twitched in patterns that meant agreement. The council demanded much and gave little. You offer much and ask little, we choose freedom. It was the same story everywhere. Species that had been marginalized by the council found opportunity in the Commonwealth. Species that had been exploited by stronger neighbors found protection. Species that had been held back by regulations found the freedom to grow and develop. Within 2 years of leaving the Council, humanity had created an alternative that was more attractive to most species than the system they were replacing. On Earth, President Santos addressed a joint session of Congress about humanity's achievements. We have proven that freedom works, she said to representatives from across human space. We have shown that species can cooperate without surrendering their independence. We have demonstrated that prosperity comes from innovation, not regulation. But our greatest achievement is not our technology or our military strength. It is the example we have set. Across the galaxy, species are choosing freedom over security, opportunity over stability, growth over stagnation. The galaxy is changing, and humanity is leading that change. In the audience, Admiral Park nodded with satisfaction. The contingency plans were working perfectly. Humanity had not just survived independence. They had thrived, but he knew this was only the beginning. Other species were watching, learning, adapting. Some would choose to join the Commonwealth. Others would try to compete with it. A few would attempt to destroy it. All of them would discover what the Kreth had learned at New Geneva. Humans were no longer the weak species that had joined the Council 300 years ago. Humanity had grown up, and the galaxy would never be the same. 2 years after Earth broke ties with the Galactic Council, Ambassador Sarah Chun stood in the same crystal chambers where she had once declared humanity's independence. But everything had changed. The massive circular room was no longer filled with representatives from 847 species. Only 312 delegates remained, and many of those seats sat empty as their occupants dealt with crises at home. The council speaker was no longer the proud Zephyrian, whose silver skin had flashed with authority. Speaker Korth was a desperate Regelian whose blue scales were dull with stress and failure. The council faces an unprecedented crisis, Korth announced to the diminished assembly. 135 member species have left to join the human Commonwealth. 79 others have declared neutrality. Our economic networks are failing. Our military capabilities are insufficient to maintain order. Sarah listened through her translation device with mixed emotions. She felt no joy in the Council's collapse, but she could not ignore the irony. The same chamber where humanity had been told it was too weak to survive alone now hosted discussions about the Council's own survival. The humans must be stopped, declared General Vex, who had been given a council seat after his defeat at New Geneva. Their Commonwealth threatens the natural order of galactic civilization? Sarah almost laughed. The natural order that Vex defended was one where strong species exploited weak ones, where innovation was discouraged, and where freedom was sacrificed for the illusion of security. With respect, General, Sarah said, rising from her seat, the Commonwealth threatens nothing except stagnation and oppression. The chamber turned to look at her. She was no longer humanity's ambassador to the Council. She was now Secretary General of the Terran Commonwealth, representing 43 species that had chosen cooperation over control. You destroyed our unity, Speaker Korth accused. You shattered the peace that held the galaxy together for 3,000 years. We offered an alternative, Sarah replied calmly. We proved that species could prosper without surrendering their freedom. We showed that cooperation works better than control. It was true. The Commonwealth had grown beyond anyone's expectations. The original 28 species had become 43, and more were joining every month. Unlike the Council's slow, bureaucratic admission process, Commonwealth membership was simple. Agree to the principles of mutual defense, free trade, and self-determination. The results spoke for themselves. Commonwealth worlds reported economic growth rates 3 times higher than Council averages. Commonwealth species were developing new technologies at unprecedented rates. Commonwealth military forces, while smaller than the old Council fleets, were far more effective at maintaining peace and security. On Earth, President Santos reviewed reports that would have seemed impossible 2 years earlier. Humanity had not just survived outside the Council system. They had created something better. Industrial production is up 200%, Treasury Secretary Kim reported. Our shipyards are building vessels for 12 different Commonwealth species. Our universities are training students from 37 worlds. Agricultural output from the farming worlds is feeding half the galaxy, added Agriculture Secretary Williams. We are supplying food to Council worlds whose own production has failed. The military reports are equally impressive, said Admiral Park. Our fleets now patrol more space than the old Council Navy ever covered. Piracy is down 60% in Commonwealth territory. Trade route security is at an all-time high. But the most significant change was not in the numbers. It was in the spirit of the people living in Commonwealth space. On New Geneva, Governor Martinez walked through a city that had become the unofficial capital of the Commonwealth. The streets were filled with beings from dozens of different worlds, all working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. Human children played in parks alongside young Altarians, Belosians, and Centauri. Former Council species that had fought wars with each other for centuries now collaborated on research projects and business ventures. The diversity was not just tolerated but celebrated. Governor, her aide reported, the architect delegation has arrived. Martinez felt her heart skip. The architects were the oldest, most advanced species in the galaxy. They had been ancient when humans were still learning to use fire. They had never taken sides in galactic politics, remaining neutral observers of younger species conflicts. If the architects were sending a delegation to Commonwealth space, it meant something significant was happening. The architect ship was unlike anything in any species fleet. It seemed to be made of crystallized light, shifting between dimensions in ways that hurt to look at directly. When the delegation emerged, they appeared as tall, graceful beings of pure energy wearing forms that resembled idealized humanoids. Governor Martinez, the lead architect spoke in a voice like singing crystal, we come to observe what you have built. You are welcome in Commonwealth space, Martinez replied, trying to hide her nervousness. What would you like to see? Everything, the architect said simply. For 3 days, the architect delegation toured Commonwealth worlds. They visited human research stations where scientists from 12 species worked together on projects that pushed the boundaries of known physics. They observed Altarian biotechnology laboratories that were growing new organs for wounded veterans of a dozen different wars. They watched Belosian traders negotiating deals that brought prosperity to previously impoverished worlds. But most importantly, they attended a Commonwealth Assembly session where representatives from 43 species debated policy with passion, but without violence, where disagreements were resolved through discussion rather than force, where the strong protected the weak instead of exploiting them. On the final day of their visit, the lead architect met privately with Secretary General Chun on Freedom Point. Your species has achieved something remarkable, the architect said. In our 50,000 years of observation, we have seen many attempts at galactic unity. All have failed because they tried to impose order from above. You have succeeded because you built cooperation from below. Sarah felt the weight of history in the architect's words. We simply offered species what they wanted, the freedom to choose their own path while still being part of something larger. Yes, the architect agreed. And in doing so, you have changed the galaxy forever. The architect's next words sent shockwaves across known space. The Architect Collective formally recognizes the Terran Commonwealth as the legitimate government of free, galactic civilization. We offer our knowledge, our technology, and our support to your continued growth. The announcement changed everything. On Nexus Prime, the council chambers erupted in panic. If the architects, the most advanced species in the galaxy, supported the Commonwealth over the council, it meant the old order was truly dead. We cannot compete with architect technology, Intelligence Director Kala reported to the emergency session. Their support gives the Commonwealth capabilities we cannot match. Then we must negotiate, Speaker Korth said desperately. We must find a way to coexist. But it was too late for coexistence. The galaxy had chosen, over the following months, the remaining council species faced a simple choice: join the Commonwealth or watch their worlds slide into irrelevance. Most chose freedom. The Regelians, who had been founding members of the original council, applied for Commonwealth membership. When their economy collapsed without access to human trade networks, the Vegan Republic, despite their pacifist philosophy, joined when pirates began raiding their worlds with no council fleet to protect them. Even some Kreth worlds declared independence from their own government to join the Commonwealth, preferring human protection to the endless wars their leaders promised. General Vex, watching his empire crumble, made one final attempt to destroy what humans had built. He gathered the last of the Kreth military and launched an attack on Freedom Point itself, hoping to decapitate the Commonwealth leadership. It was a mistake. Admiral Park's response was swift and final. The Kreth attack fleet was destroyed so completely that no wreckage remained. The human counterattack reached Kreth Prime within hours, where Commonwealth forces offered the Kreth people a choice: surrender their government and join the Commonwealth, or watch their homeworld burned. Kreth chose surrender. General Vex himself was brought before a Commonwealth tribunal where he faced not execution, but something he found far worse: rehabilitation. Human psychologists and Altarian therapists worked to help him understand that strength came from cooperation, not domination. You could have killed me, Vex said to Admiral Park during one of his sessions. Killing you would have made you a martyr, Park replied. Helping you become a better person makes you an example. It was perhaps the most human response possible. Instead of destroying their enemies, humans chose to transform them. By the end of the second year, the Galactic Council as an institution ceased to exist. The crystal towers of Nexus Prime were converted into Commonwealth administrative centers. The bureaucrats who had once slowed progress with endless regulations became coordinators who helped species work together more effectively. Secretary General Chun stood once again in the Great Chamber, but now it hosted representatives from 112 Commonwealth species. The room buzzed with the energy of beings who were free to dream, free to build, free to reach for the stars. 2 years ago, she said in her address to the Assembly, humanity chose freedom over security. We chose opportunity over comfort. We chose to trust in our own strength rather than depend on others' protection. Today, over 100 species have made the same choice. Together we have built something the galaxy has never seen: a civilization based on cooperation rather than control, on opportunity rather than exploitation, on hope rather than fear. She looked around the chamber at beings who had once been enemies working side by side to solve problems that affected them all. We have not created perfection. We still face challenges, conflicts, and disagreements, but we face them as free beings working together, not as subjects controlled by others. The galaxy held its breath when Earth broke ties with the Council. Today, the galaxy breathes freely because of the choice we made. In the audience, Admiral Park smiled with quiet satisfaction. The contingency plans had worked better than anyone had dared hope. Humanity had not just survived their independence. They had used it to transform galactic civilization itself. On Earth, President Santos walked through the same gardens where she had once worried about humanity's future. Now those gardens hosted representatives from across the galaxy, all working together to build a better tomorrow. Her successor, President Chun, Sarah's younger sister, joined her on the path. Any regrets about the decision to leave the council? The younger woman asked. Maria looked up at the stars, where human ships now traveled freely among worlds that welcomed them as equals rather than merely tolerated them as subjects. None, she said simply. We gave the galaxy a choice between freedom and control. They chose freedom. And now? Now we keep building, we keep growing. We keep showing the galaxy that cooperation works better than domination, that trust works better than fear, that freedom works better than control. Above them, the stars shone with the light of human colonies, Commonwealth worlds and free species working together to build a future that none of them could have achieved alone. The galaxy had held its breath when humanity broke ties with the council. Now it breathed freely, and the future belonged to those brave enough to choose freedom over security, opportunity over comfort, and hope over fear. Humanity had shown the way. The galaxy had followed, and the stars themselves seemed brighter for it.